He wasn't looking for hope. He wasn't praying for a miracle. He had already decided his life was over. He just hadn't told anyone yet. Then a stranger said one sentence that shattered everything he believed about pain, failure, and purpose. Not motivation, not comfort. A truth so uncomfortable it forced him to see himself clearly for the first time. This isn't a story about being saved. It's a story about being shown and what happens when you finally stop running from yourself. If you have ever felt tired of trying, if you have ever felt invisible in your own life, stay until the end of this story because one sentence may change how you see your pain forever. And if this story touches you, subscribe and listen closely. This may be the message you didn't know you needed. Chapter 1. The Quiet Decision to Give Up. Henry Watson was 34 years old when he quietly gave up on life. There was no dramatic moment, no shouting, no tears, no goodbye letters, just a slow decision made over many tired mornings. He woke up every day at the same time, took the same bus, sat at the same desk, and returned to the same small apartment. His life looked stable from the outside. He paid his bills, he smiled politely, he answered, "I'm fine," whenever someone asked how he was. But inside, Henry felt empty. He used to have dreams. When he was younger, he wanted to become a writer. He loved words, stories, and quiet places where ideas could grow. But life didn't wait for dreams. Responsibilities came, failures followed. Each rejection letter, each mistake, each disappointment took a small piece of his hope. Over time, Henry stopped expecting good things. He told himself it was maturity. Dreams are for children, he thought. Real life is about survival. But survival without meaning slowly became unbearable. Henry noticed something strange about himself. He no longer felt sad or angry. He felt nothing. No excitement, no fear, no joy, just silence. He ate because he had to, slept because his body demanded it, spoke because silence made others uncomfortable. At night, he lay in bed staring at the ceiling, asking the same question again and again. Is this all there is? He wasn't thinking about death. He was thinking about escape. Giving up did not mean stopping life. It meant stopping effort. Henry stopped trying to improve. He stopped believing change was possible. He stopped correcting people when they misunderstood him. He stopped fighting for himself. And strangely, that felt easier. There was comfort in low expectations. If you expect nothing, nothing can hurt you. If you stop hoping, disappointment loses its power. Henry built his life around this idea, a small, safe life, no risks, no dreams, no pain, but also no meaning. One evening, Henry stood by his apartment window, watching people walk below. Couples laughed, children ran, strangers argued and forgave. Life moved forward without him. He whispered to himself, "I don't belong here." That thought didn't scare him. It felt calm, final. That was the quiet moment Henry Watson gave up, not on breathing, but on becoming. Chapter 2. When Pain Becomes Normal. Pain did not arrive suddenly in Henry Watson's life. It came slowly, like dust, settling every day until it felt impossible to clean. At first, pain shocked him. His first failure hurt deeply. His first rejection kept him awake at night. He questioned himself. He cried. He hoped the next time would be better. But next time kept disappointing him. Years passed. Mistakes repeated. Promises, his own and others, were broken. Over time, Henry learned a dangerous lesson. Pain does not disappear. It only changes shape. Eventually, pain stopped feeling sharp. It became dull, familiar. Henry started to accept it as normal. This is just how life is. he told himself. Some people win, some people endure. He became very good at enduring. When something went wrong, he didn't react. He expected it. When people disappointed him, he nodded quietly. When opportunities passed him by, he said nothing. Pain lost its power to surprise him, but it gained power to control him. Henry stopped trusting good moments. If something good happened, he waited for it to end. Happiness felt temporary and dangerous, like standing on weak ground, so he avoided it. He also avoided people, not because he hated them, but because being seen required energy, and Henry was tired of explaining why he felt empty when everything looked fine. Friends slowly stopped calling. Family assumed he was busy. No one noticed the difference between Henry's silence and peace. Inside, something important was happening. Henry began to confuse numbness with strength. He thought feeling nothing meant he was strong. He thought not reacting meant he was wise. He thought lowering expectations meant he was realistic. But numbness is not strength, it is protection. Pain had trained him well. It taught him how to stay small, how to avoid disappointment by avoiding desire, how to stay safe by staying still. One morning on the bus to work, Henry reflected his reflection in the glass. His eyes looked tired, not sad, just distant. He asked himself a question he had avoided for years. When did I stop caring about my own life? The answer scared him. He could not remember. That was the moment Henry realized something terrifying. Pain had not destroyed him, it had trained him to disappear quietly. And when pain becomes normal, you stop noticing how much of yourself you have lost. Chapter 3: The Lies We Tell Ourselves to Survive. Henry Watson did not think of himself as a liar. He believed he was honest, especially with himself. But the truth was, Henry had learned to tell small lies every day, not to hurt others, but to survive. The first lie sounded reasonable. I am just unlucky. Whenever something failed, this was the explanation. Other people had better timing, better connections, better lives. Henry told himself it was not his fault, and that thought gave him relief. If life was unfair, then trying harder would not matter. The second lie came quietly. I tried already. Henry remembered his past efforts, applications sent, ideas started, plans abandoned. He focused on the pain of those moments, not the lessons. He told himself effort only led to disappointment. This lie protected him from trying again. The third lie was the most dangerous. This is who I am. Henry began to believe his current state was permanent, tired, invisible, behind. He stopped seeing himself as someone becoming something. Instead, he saw himself as something finished. These lies did not make Henry weak, they made him comfortable. Comfortable with low expectations, comfortable with silence, comfortable with staying exactly where he was. Whenever a small voice inside him whispered, "You could do more," Henry answered quickly, "Don't be foolish. Don't hope. Hope only hurts." And so he learned to kill hope before it could hurt him. One evening, Henry received a message from an old friend. The friend had started a small business. Nothing big, just progress. The message was friendly, full of life. Henry stared at his phone for a long time. Instead of feeling inspired, he felt angry, not at his friend, but at himself. To stop that feeling, he told another lie. He got lucky. He's different from me. That would never work for me. Each lie pushed the pain away. Each lie also pushed Henry further from himself. Henry didn't realize it yet, but these lies were not protecting him from pain anymore. They were protecting him from responsibility, responsibility to act, responsibility to change, responsibility to face discomfort. Deep down, Henry knew something was wrong. Late at night, when the world was quiet, he felt a pressure in his chest, not sadness, but resistance, like something inside him wanted to move, but he refused to let it. He whispered into the darkness, "I don't have the energy." That was the final lie, because energy does not come before action, it comes after. Henry was not broken, he was hiding, and the lies he told himself were slowly building a cage he could no longer see. Chapter 4. The Day Everything Almost Ended. The day everything almost ended did not feel special. That was what made it dangerous. Henry Watson woke up late. He skipped breakfast, missed the bus, walked to work in silence, his shoulders heavy, his mind empty. Nothing terrible happened, nothing unusual. That was the problem. At work, Henry stared at his computer screen, reading the same sentence again and again without understanding it. Around him, people talked, laughed, complained. Life continued, but Henry felt like he was watching it through glass. During lunch, he sat alone, eating without taste. He checked his phone. No messages, no missed calls. He felt a strange thought enter his mind. Not dramatic, not emotional. If I disappeared, nothing would change. The thought did not frighten him. It felt logical. After work, instead of going home, Henry kept walking. The streets grew quieter. The sky turned gray. He walked without direction, without urgency. His body moved, but his mind felt finished. He stopped near a bridge that crossed a wide road. Cars moved quickly below. People passed behind him without noticing. Henry placed his hands on the railing and looked down. He wasn't planning anything. He was considering nothingness. For the first time, Henry admitted the truth to himself. I am tired of existing without meaning. His chest felt tight. Not panic, pressure. Years of silence, lies, and numbness pressed together in one moment. And then something unexpected happened. A voice spoke beside him. "Hard day?" Henry turned. An older man stood there, calm, ordinary, holding a paper cup of coffee. No concern in his voice, no fear. Henry nodded slowly. The man didn't ask more questions. He didn't offer advice. He just stood beside Henry, looking at the road below. After a moment, the man spoke again. "You know," he said quietly, "giving up feels peaceful because it feels like control." Henry felt something shift inside him. The man looked at him, not with pity, but clarity. "But peace that avoids pain is not peace," the man continued. "It's just a slow way of disappearing." Henry swallowed. For the first time in years, someone had not tried to comfort him. They had told him the truth. And that single moment, the bridge, the stranger, the sentence, became the line between the life Henry was escaping and the life he had not yet dared to face. Chapter 5. A Stranger Who Didn't Try to Save Him. Henry expected the stranger to leave. Most people did. They asked a polite question, waited for a polite answer, and moved on. That was the rhythm of the world. But this man stayed. They stood side by side on the bridge, not speaking. Cars rushed below them like fast thoughts Henry could not catch. The air felt heavy, but calm. The man took a small sip of his coffee. "I come here sometimes, not because I'm sad, because it helps me think." Henry nodded, unsure what to say. The man didn't ask Henry why he was there. He didn't ask about his job, his family, or his past. He didn't say, "Everything will be okay." That surprised Henry. Most people rush to fix pain. This man didn't. After a long pause, the man spoke again. "You look like someone who's been strong for too long." The words hit Henry harder than expected. He opened his mouth, ready to deny it, but nothing came out. The man continued, calm and steady. "People think strength means holding everything in, but holding everything in is just another way of running." Henry felt his chest tighten. No one had ever said that to him. The man turned slightly toward Henry. "I'm not here to save you," he said. "I don't even know you." Henry looked at him now. "But I can tell you something honest. You're not tired because life is hard. You're tired because you've been avoiding it." Henry felt uncomfortable, defensive, angry. "That's not true," he said quietly. The man nodded. "Of course you'd say that. Avoidance always sounds like wisdom when you've done it long enough." Henry stared at the road below, his mind racing. The stranger wasn't cruel, he wasn't loud, he wasn't judging. That made it worse. There was no one to argue with. "I don't know your pain," the man said, "but I know this. Pain avoided doesn't disappear. It waits." Henry clenched his jaw. "I didn't come here for a lecture," he said. The man smiled softly. "Good. I didn't come here to give one." Another silence followed. Then the stranger asked a question. Not, "Are you okay?" Not, "Do you need help?" He asked, "What are you pretending not to know about yourself?" The question landed slowly. Henry felt something break open, not loudly, not suddenly, but enough to let air in. He thought of his dreams, his fear, his excuses. For the first time, Henry did not answer quickly, and the stranger did not rush him, because this man understood something Henry was just beginning to learn. Real change does not begin with comfort. It begins with honesty. Chapter 6. The Sentence That Changed Everything. Henry finally spoke. "I think," he said slowly, "I stopped believing I mattered." The stranger nodded, as if he had expected that answer. "That happens," he said. "When effort feels pointless, we decide we are the problem." Henry felt exposed, but also relieved. The stranger leaned on the railing, looking ahead. "Can I tell you something that might make you uncomfortable?" he asked. Henry hesitated, then nodded. The man turned to him and said the sentence that would stay with Henry for the rest of his life. "Your pain isn't special, but your responsibility for it is." Henry felt a sharp reaction rise inside him. "That's harsh," he said. The man nodded again. "It is, but it's also freeing." Henry shook his head. "You don't understand what I've been through." The stranger didn't argue. "I don't need to," he said. "Pain doesn't give us meaning. Response does." Henry felt anger, then confusion. The man continued, his voice steady. "You've been waiting for life to stop hurting before you move, but life doesn't reward waiting. It rewards participation." Henry's heart pounded. The sentence echoed in his mind. Your pain isn't special, but your responsibility for it is. For years, Henry believed his suffering excused his inaction. That sentence removed the excuse. And strangely, it didn't feel cruel. It felt honest. The stranger spoke again. "You don't need motivation. You don't need hope. You need direction." Henry asked, "How?" The man smiled. "Do one thing every day that proves you are not finished," he said. Not something impressive, something uncomfortable. Henry stood silently. The stranger finished his coffee and stepped back. "I won't see you again," he said. "That's not important." He looked Henry in the eyes. "What matters is this. Are you willing to stop using pain as permission to quit?" With that, the man walked away. Henry remained on the bridge, breathing slowly. Nothing magical happened, but something shifted. For the first time in years, Henry did not feel saved. He felt challenged, and that challenge followed him home, quietly, persistently, waiting to see what he would do next. Chapter 7. Seeing Himself Without Excuses. Henry Watson did not sleep well that night. The stranger's sentence returned again and again, quiet but heavy. Your pain isn't special, but your responsibility for it is. Henry did not like the sentence. That bothered him most. If it were wrong, he could ignore it. If it were cruel, he could reject it. But it felt true in a way that made hiding impossible. The next morning, Henry stood in front of his bathroom mirror longer than usual. He looked at his face, not with anger, not with pity, but with curiosity. "For once," he whispered, "tell the truth." At work, he noticed patterns he had never allowed himself to see. How quickly he avoided difficult tasks. How often he stayed quiet when he had ideas. How easily he assumed failure before effort. None of these things were dramatic. That was the problem. Henry had always imagined change as something big and emotional, a breakdown, a breakthrough, a moment of courage. But now he saw the truth. He was not held back by fear alone. He was held back by habits. At lunch, instead of scrolling on his phone, Henry took a notebook from his bag. It was old. He used to write in it years ago. His hands felt strange holding a pen. He wrote one sentence. "What am I avoiding today?" The answer came faster than expected. A conversation, a responsibility, a decision. Henry felt uncomfortable. His first instinct was to close the notebook and return to safety. But he remembered the stranger's words. "Do one thing every day that proves you are not finished." That afternoon, Henry spoke up in a meeting. His voice was quiet and his hands shook. The idea was not perfect, but it was honest. No one laughed, no one praised him, and yet something inside him felt different. On the way home, Henry realized something important. Facing himself did not feel powerful. It felt awkward, slow, ordinary. That night, Henry sat alone and looked back at his life, not to blame others, but to observe himself. He saw how often he had waited for confidence before acting, how often he had waited for clarity before choosing, how often he had waited for permission before becoming. And he understood something painful but freeing. No one had trapped him. No one had stopped him. He had been waiting for certainty in a world that only rewarded courage. Henry did not hate himself for this realization. He felt compassion. He had done what he needed to survive, but survival was no longer enough. For the first time in years, Henry allowed himself to ask a new question. Who could I become if I stopped protecting myself from discomfort? The question did not come with answers, but it came with movement, and that was enough. Chapter 8. The Difference Between Suffering and Meaning. Henry Watson used to believe suffering was the enemy. If life hurt less, he thought, everything would improve. If discomfort disappeared, happiness would arrive. That belief shaped every decision he made. Avoid pain, avoid risk, avoid failure. But now, something strange was happening. Henry was uncomfortable more often, and yet he felt more alive. Small changes entered his life. He woke up earlier. He walked instead of taking the bus sometimes. He wrote a few sentences each night, even when they felt useless. None of this removed pain, it changed its shape. Henry began to notice two kinds of suffering. The first kind was familiar, the suffering of avoidance. This suffering felt quiet but heavy. It came from regret, self-doubt, and wasted time. It stayed no matter how still he became. The second kind was new, the suffering of effort. This suffering felt sharp but light. It came from trying, failing, and being seen. It passed faster, and it left something behind: meaning. One evening, Henry remembered the stranger again. He finally understood what the man meant. Pain without meaning destroys people. Pain with meaning builds them. Henry was not happier, but he was clearer. He began to measure his days differently, not by comfort, but by honesty, not by success, but by effort. Some days were terrible. He doubted himself. He wanted to quit. The old voice returned, whispering excuses. "You're tired. This is pointless. Go back to safety." And sometimes Henry listened, but something had changed. When he slipped, he noticed it. When he avoided, he admitted it. When he failed, he stayed. That was new. One night, Henry sat at his desk, staring at a blank page. He felt frustrated. Writing felt slow, awkward, meaningless. Then he smiled. This was the suffering of effort, and for the first time, he welcomed it, because this pain did not ask him to disappear, it asked him to participate. Henry finally understood. Life was not asking him to feel good, it was asking him to show up. And showing up, even imperfectly, was the beginning of meaning. Chapter 9: Small Choices That Rebuild a Life. Henry Watson stopped waiting for big moments. He realized that big moments were rare, unpredictable, and often excuses to delay action. Instead, Henry focused on something smaller: choices. Every morning, he asked himself one simple question: what is one thing I can do today that the old version of me would avoid? Some days the answer was small: send the email, take the walk, write one paragraph. Other days it felt heavier: say no, speak honestly, admit fear. None of these actions changed his life immediately, but they changed something more important: his identity. Henry began to see himself as someone who stayed with discomfort, stayed with uncertainty, stayed with effort. Failures still came, rejection still appeared, doubt still visited him late at night. But failure no longer meant stop, it meant adjust. One evening, Henry missed a personal deadline he had set for himself. The old version of him would have quit completely. He would have said, "See, I can't even do this." Instead, Henry paused. He wrote one sentence in his notebook: "I did not fail, I delayed." The next day, he continued. This was new. Henry also noticed something else. His world slowly expanded. Conversations became easier. His posture changed. People responded differently, not because he was confident, but because he was present. He stopped waiting to feel worthy before acting. He acted, and worth followed. Henry understood now that rebuilding a life was not about motivation. Motivation came and went. Discipline felt heavy. What sustained him was meaning. Each small choice reminded him, "I am not finished." And over time, those choices formed a quiet promise. No matter how slow the progress, he would not abandon himself again. Chapter 10. Becoming the person who stays. Henry Watson's life did not become perfect. Some mornings he still felt tired. Some nights he still doubted himself. The difference was simple but powerful. He no longer ran. When things became uncomfortable, Henry stayed. When fear appeared, he listened, but he did not obey. He learned that courage was not loud, it was steady. Months later, Henry returned to the bridge, not because he was lost, because he remembered. He stood at the railing, watching cars move below, feeling the air on his face. He thought about the stranger. He never saw him again. He never learned his name, but that did not matter. The stranger had not saved him. He had shown him. Henry smiled softly. He understood now that the most important change was not external, it was internal. He trusted himself again, not to succeed, but to stay. And one day, while sitting in a quiet cafe, Henry noticed a young man nearby. The man looked distant, tired, familiar. Henry did not interrupt him. He did not offer advice. He simply spoke when the moment felt right. "Hard day?" The young man looked up, and Henry realized something beautiful. He had become what once saved him, not a hero, not a miracle, but a mirror, someone who stayed long enough to tell the truth. Henry Watson did not find happiness. He found responsibility. He did not erase his pain. He stopped using it as an excuse. He did not wait for life to become easier. He became someone who could carry it. And that is the lesson. Your pain is real, but it is not permission to disappear. Your past matters, but it does not decide your future. And your fear is loud, but it does not get the final word. So here's the challenge. Listen carefully. Do one thing today that the old version of you would avoid. Not tomorrow, not when you feel ready, today. And if this story spoke to you, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who needs to hear this truth. Because staying with life, with effort, with yourself, that is how a life is rebuilt.